Tell me more about your book and who you wrote it for, what the reader's going to get out of it.
Actually, the dedication in the very beginning of the book, I say that I dedicate this book to anyone who has ever dimmed their light or played small in an attempt to fit in and belong. Anyone who has abandoned themselves, betrayed themselves because they wanted to feel safe and to be loved. And then also for anyone who is ready to leave that old story and to really step into who they know on a very deep soul level, who they were born to be.
Hi everyone, Janna here, and welcome to my show. I hope you all are having a really great day. So I have a very special guest with me today. We met as we were both writing our books, and we became fast friends. And I'm just really excited to introduce her to all of you. So Amber Susa, she is an empowered dance expert, healer, teacher, inspirational speaker, founder and owner of All of Me, a sanctuary for holistic health and healing. And she is an author of the newly released book, Born to Be All of Me. Amber, congratulations on your new book. How are you today?
Thank you, Janna. I'm good. I'm happy to be here with you. Yeah, my books, I'm really excited. You've done it. It's a very,
It's a lot of work.
it is.
It sounds really easy to say I wrote a book, but as you know, it is not an easy process, and it's like birthing a baby.
Yeah, no, I wanted to quit many, many times. I was like, oh my God, there were so many times. In fact, I was telling you before we hit record that a lot of my book it includes journal entries. And so there's like a specific journal entry where I'm writing this book right now, and I have no idea how it's going to actually turn into a book. Like, I can't see how it's going to all come together. It feels like it's so far away. So, it's good
But
to,
you had that feeling, you had the gut feeling in that journal entry that it was going to be a book somehow.
oh, absolutely. Well, I had written a one woman show. I wrote and performed a one woman show that was called Waking Up to All of Me. And it was similarly about my life, about my healing journey. And I experienced that feeling in that process where I was like, how is this going to turn into a thing? And so I think that the more we say yes to these soul callings and complete the assignments, that we're able to, when we do come up against that resistance or that fear, we're able to say, oh, I've been here before and I made it through and I completed it. So it's all going to be good. It's all going to work out.
Yeah, and I think that message, I think, is a lot about what your book is about. Moving out of self-abandonment into full authentic embodiment. And so tell me more about your book and who you wrote it for, what the reader's going to get out of it.
So my book is actually the dedication in the very beginning of the book. I say that I dedicate this book to anyone who has ever dimmed their light or played small in an attempt to fit in and belong. Anyone who has abandoned themselves, betrayed themselves because they wanted to feel safe and to be loved. And then also for anyone who is ready to leave that old story and to really step into who they know on a very deep soul level, who they were born to be. Like I always felt, even though I existed in circumstances that were not embodying all of who, my full authentic self, there was this little voice inside that would say to me, Amber, you know that you're here for more. Like, this is not the life that you were born to live. There's more for you. And, it took what it took for me to get to a place where I was willing to walk into the unknown. I think so many of us
Yeah.
stay in the self-abandonment, even though it's painful, because it's what we know, right? And we don't know what lives on the other side of that. And so to have the courage to say, you know what, I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I know there's more than this. And yeah, I want to live in a life that's fully and authentically embodied.
And I love I love that. It's one of the things I love about you is that we both have that understanding, but we only have that understanding because we did choose to venture out into the unknown. So just like you were saying, it's more about which discomfort you want, because people might be uncomfortable in their lives, and it might not be what they want. They might not even be very happy, but they become complacent, and that to them is more comfortable than to venture out into the unknown, which is super uncomfortable, right? It's
Yeah,
there's nothing guaranteed. You have no idea what's on the other side.
right.
But as you know, we grow in the discomfort. Um, One of the things that I love about you is that your desire and intention in all that you do is to elevate others through movement, meditation, mindfulness. So tell me more about all of that with the movement and stuff with what you
Mm,
do.
thank you. I love you. You know, one of the
You have some dance moves.
Oh, thank you. It is my happy place. I will say that. Dancing is my happy place. It always has been. I mean, since I was a little girl, I have loved dancing. But to speak to what you just said as far as like my desire to support other people and help other people and love other people, um, I feel like I've had that my entire life. I mean, even as a young girl, like I would I would see people, I would recognize people who were in pain or were having a hard time, right? Like even in elementary school, like there was a boy who was the kid that got picked on, right? And I have always had a very compassionate, empathetic heart, and like have wanted to help people move through their pain. Now, for most of my life, I did that, but I abandoned myself in the process. Like I hadn't learned how to love other people and support other people and also like stay in alignment with the truth of who I was, right? So I would choose relationships where I would see people that were, in pain or had some sort of trauma in their life, and I would want to love them. Um, but it took having several very painful, self-abandoning experiences and relationships for me to discover that I can help people and love people and support people, while also being true to who I am and loving myself. Loving myself.
Yeah, and I think that that's important because I'm very similar in the sense, growing up my whole life. I just have a lot of empathy, and it's I don't like to see other people suffer, and I think that's what makes you and I so good at what we do,
Hmm.
and coaching and teaching and wanting to help others is because we genuinely have a deep passion for wanting everyone to feel their very best.
Yeah.
But sometimes that means that you sacrifice yourself, right? And it's really, really hard to give from an empty cup.
Yes.
I know something in your book you discuss is carrying the weight around of others.
Yes. Yes.
Um, what would you say to the woman who is currently doing that right now and basically giving from an empty cup?
Well, there were many years that I didn't even recognize that's what I was doing. You know,
Mm,
um, I didn't consciously know that I was abandoning myself or sacrificing myself, um, to love somebody else. But there are signs, and I think that's one of the reasons why I chose to invite people into my very personal experience and all of my journal entries that I share, so that people can start to recognize themselves in my story. So, for example, in my marriage that I am no longer in, when we met, I had been sober for 12 years, And I had just gotten back into acting and performing and dancing. That was something that I always felt like was my calling, my love. And when we met, I convinced myself that I wanted to take a break from acting. I didn't really, need it. And also, I convinced myself that when I went to rehab at 19 for a drug addiction, that it was just a phase I was going through, and I was a teenager, and so I decided to give up my sobriety and start drinking again. Now, at the time, I didn't recognize that as self abandonment or self sacrifice or self betrayal. I thought it was, I fell in love, I want to be with this person, and this is the choice that I'm making. And, acting was just really like a silly, childish dream. And, the thing without, I mean, everybody drinks, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't want to be alone anymore. And so, this is what I would say to a woman who is questioning whether or not she is sacrificing who she is. um, look at your life. Have you made choices to give up something that you love? Have you lied to yourself? You really have to be honest. You really have to get honest with yourself in order for that to change.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And, um, you're right in what you were saying, where you didn't even realize that you were abandoning yourself again, right? Because I think it's easy to just chalk everything up to some excuse, right? Like, well, everybody does this, everybody drinks, everybody, whatever that thing
Right.
is. And it's just it's really just a way to just kick the can down the road, to not, um, to not really deal with something, so to speak. And, you know, I think that people have a lot of unhealthy habits these days, and it comes in all different forms, whether it's too much on social media, um, eating unhealthy, binge watching, drinking, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Um, it just seems like people want to numb themselves more than ever. And sometimes I wonder if, you know, especially with women that are moms, um, you just get wrapped up in being a mom, and on the go, and your kids have activities, and it's just go, 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 go. And sometimes it's just really hard to make time for yourself.
Absolutely.
What are ways that you like to like make time for yourself, especially when you have your kids?
Well, my kids are older now. They're 9 and 11. And, I'll tell you, when they were really young, I had a really hard time um, making time for myself. And um, I didn't recognize the importance of that. Today, they are very aware of what my lifestyle is. Like, they know that I meditate every single morning. They know that I pull my angel cards, and they know that I don't drink alcohol, and they know that they understand that my relationship with God, with the universe, with spirit, with loving myself, right? Like, I'm very open with them about my life, about my priorities, about what is important to me, and how my belief that choosing myself and loving myself actually allows me to be the best mom that I want to be. Because I think that that's
Oh,
a
yeah.
really big belief system that we're up against. That
Mhm.
being a good mom means that you sacrifice yourself, right? Like, that's a saying.
Oh,
That's a saying that
yes.
you
I love
hear,
that.
right? Like, oh my God, she's so
I
amazing.
love
She's
that you said,
she's so selfless, and it's like,
"Look at her.
yeah, like,
Look at
yeah,
her."
she has sacrificed so much for these kids. She's the best mom. And it's like, wait a minute, why does that make her a good mom? Like, my daughter, she's so cute. She's 11, and she says to me all the time, she's like, Mom, I am so proud of you. You're going to help so many people with your
Oh,
book. Like, she sees
oh
that.
my
Yes. She's like,
goodness.
you're going to help so many people with your book, and I'm so proud of you. So I'm teaching them, I'm modeling for them what it is to love myself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. That you don't have to
Oh gosh.
sacrifice yourself. That's
That
not
makes
love.
that just makes me emotional, because there's nothing better than that feeling. And, I don't know why it's making me really emotional. That reminds me of my kids. I have 3 kids, as you know,
Yeah.
and, my oldest kid said that to me, and so I think that's why it's making me emotional. But it's also because you and I have been setting an example to our kids after we went through so much hell.
Oh,
We've both been through hell and back.
yes.
And we decided to get out of the victim mentality and to overcome. And we decided to follow our purpose and live the life that we were meant to live.
Yeah.
And that's the reason our kids tell us that. And I know that. And so I know when you say your 11-year-old daughter, when she said that to you, that's why. And I mean, there's nothing better than that. There is nothing better than your kids looking at you and saying, Mom, I'm proud of you.
Yeah. And you know what, Janna? And I know that you get this. Um, when I was married, I was I was not happy for a long time. And but I was afraid to leave for all the reasons why people are afraid to leave, right? A marriage or a relationship. But when I realized what I was modeling for my children, I could not live with myself, right? Because what I was modeling was self abandonment. What I was modeling was self betrayal. What I was modeling was not loving myself. Um, and so, as painful as it was, actually, my love for my children, um, it gave me the strength because I want them to see what it looks like to love yourself, to honor yourself, to respect yourself, even when other people aren't. Like, I want them to see what it looks like to have a woman say yes to the call of her soul,
Mm.
even when she's being told that she's being selfish or she's being this or that or whatever, right? Like, I want them to see that. And so, even on the days where I want to curl up in a ball and cry and give up, right? Uh,
Like I did the other day.
I get it. Like, I mean, my children literally, I feel like they give me the strength to continue rising because I'm like, I'll be damned
Oh.
if I'm going to come this far and not see it through. Like, they're counting on me. Like, I teach them this, right? I have to keep going and keep showing up and be the woman that I was born to be so that they can be who they were born
Well,
to be.
absolutely. And you can't, I mean, I can't, how do I look at my kids and tell them you can be anything you want to be?
Right.
Mommy's got you.
Right.
But, I'm over here not doing the same.
Yep.
And I want to talk about something that you kind of hit on a little bit,
Mm.
which I think is important. And it's actually something I just did on my podcast, which is about staying stuck in relationships. And this is whether you're married or it's just a committed relationship and or friendship.
Mhm.
But I think, Amber, the reason, I mean, I know for me, because I did that similar with you, married to my kid's dad, and we were together for a long time. It was like over 14
Yep.
years. And part of it was there was a little bit of, manipulation and brainwash there for me personally. But it's just, you just kind of get like, you just get stuck. And I didn't believe in myself enough.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, the reason I got stuck, and I think a lot of people do, is they think that's as good as it's going to get. Or maybe they believe the lies they're being told. But I really think it just boils down to you just don't love yourself and you don't believe in yourself enough. Was that what it was for you as well? Just like not believing in yourself?
Yes. I mean, clearly, to be in any relationship that is not in full honor of all of who you
Hmm.
are, there has to be some lack of self love, without a doubt, right? Um, how that happens is different for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
I think that for me, I am no matter how no matter how much pain I've gone through, I love to love. I just am I'm one of those hopeful romantics and I believe in the fairy tale and I don't want to be alone. And I think that, for
Yeah.
much of my life, I made choices from this place of I don't want to be alone. And rather than
Mm.
be alone, even if it wasn't everything that I wanted it to be, it was better than being alone. That's kind of like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that's, I mean, at least that's like how that's my life is evidence of that belief. Whether I knew that was a belief that I had or not, my life is evidence of having that belief. And, I also, my very first relationship was, my first love, or my first, uh, it was incredibly painful. And I was this
Ugh.
naive, I was just this naive, innocent
How old
girl.
were you?
I met him when I was, I think, just 15. And,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Very young and naive,
I
right?
was young, I was naive. I talk about this in my book. I call him Brown Bronco. He and I met him at up in Lake Arrowhead with my family. We'd gone on a skiing trip, and I met him at a pizza joint, and he was just this beautiful, blonde, gorgeous, baby face boy. And I was smitten. I was absolutely smitten. And I fell hard. But I also fell into self-abandonment and betrayal, because um, he was a boy that was, he was going through some stuff. He lived with his mom, who was a single mom. His dad had moved away to a different state, and he didn't have much of a relationship with him. And he was acting out in his own ways of his own pain and wounds. And I was like, ooh, I'll love him, right? Like, I'll love
I can
him.
fix you.
I can fix you and heal you. And, I do talk a lot about in my book, these past 9 years, I have gone on a quest to understand myself and why I've made the choices I've made. And I
Uh,
think that from a very early age, the role of being a healer and a fixer and a saver was born, I mean, as a very young child.
yeah.
In my family system, I saw my little empathic self. I think saw the buried, hidden pain of my parents, and that was the role that I chose. But but that relationship was incredibly painful, and lots of cheating on me, that
Oh,
I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And that's where my drug addiction came into play, because I was the pain of self-abandonment is so great that you have to do something to numb it if you're not willing to leave, right?
yeah, and especially when you're that young.
Yeah.
How long how long were you in
So
that
I was in
relationship?
that relationship for 4.5 years, until I went to rehab at 19 for a drug addiction to crystal methamphetamine.
Wow.
And once
Wow.
I got
Yeah.
sober and I started to reconnect with who I was, the truth of who I was, that relationship just it fell away. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth, really. Like, it, when you start to become who you truly are, relationships that are not in alignment or are not a match to that, they're going to fall out of your life. Um,
Yeah.
so I yeah, I did that. I chose, and I continue to do that. I continue to do that for my whole life. And
You do. It's
yeah,
like the universe keeps giving you the same lesson until you're like, it's like, "Come
yeah.
on, honey, learn the
I'm,
lesson."
I'm I'm at a
And then
place
you
in my
do.
life right now where I'm like, I want love. I want to be in love, and I love love. And I can't abandon myself anymore. I just can't.
Oh.
So if that looks like being alone,
But I wanna hit on that with what you said. And by the way, I have a similar background there, where at 15 I met someone, he was older, the whole 9 yards, and ended up being a very toxic, abusive relationship. And then of course there was another one, and then there was another one. And just like with Amber, what we're saying is that until you find yourself, until you heal yourself, shatter your limiting beliefs by understanding why you do the things you do, think the way you think, make the decisions you make, want the relationships that you have. When you trace those back and you figure out why, and you can break that invisible chain, shatter the limiting belief, then when you heal yourself, you create your own happiness and you love and accept yourself. You don't need that from anybody else.
right.
And so I want to hit on alone time because um, I was literally talking to someone just the other day, a dear friend who's just beginning to go through a divorce.
Mhm.
And um, she's really been leaning on me because she knows I went through something similar. And she was like, Janna, I don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
I don't want to be lonely. And I said, well, I need to say something really fast. being alone does not mean that you're lonely.
Right.
The loneliest I've ever been in my life was in that last marriage.
Yeah.
And I wasn't alone, but I was the most lonely I'd ever been, and it was miserable because I didn't know who I was. I didn't love and accept myself. But I lived with someone who I was married to who didn't even know I existed when I was next to him.
Mm.
That to me was absolute loneliness.
Yeah.
And once I found myself after that divorce and I went through the whole healing process, I never looked forward to alone time like I did then.
Yeah.
And um, you know, it didn't mean I didn't want to have love one day. It just meant that I was okay.
Yeah.
And Amber, you're such a beautiful, amazing person.
Mm.
And you have so much to give, and you've gone through this process. You've you found yourself. You broke the invisible chains. And I do know what I do know is that when you put yourself in that situation, that's when love can find you. And you're gonna meet some amazing man who you're gonna have the best love ever. I just know it.
Oh, you make me want to cry. Thank you. I just love you.
You will because you said something else when you said as you found yourself like that relationship fell off.
Yeah.
Don't you find it's true? I know for me, my friendships weren't the same when I found myself. People, unhealed people, they didn't want to be around me. My new confidence made their insecurities just like flare up.
Mm.
Did you have that same experience with your like female friends?
You know what? To be honest with you, I have been the kind of woman that like when I'm in a relationship, like I haven't had close a lot of close female friends.
Mm,
And
okay.
so it's actually been in the last 3.5 years that I've cultivated some really incredible, beautiful friendships with women because of the space that I have. And I'm recognizing the importance and the value of having intimate friendships with other women.
Mm,
Although I did have a business partner um, that we owned a studio together, and I talk about this in the book. Yes, when I had my spiritual awakening in 2014, and I started a meditation practice. So the business that we owned was a high intensity Pilates and fitness studio. And so everything that we did was all about high intensity fitness. And that's who I was. Like I was not a meditating type. I was not a yoga kind of person, right? Like I was like the faster the better, the harder the better, like right? Like none of this meditating shit.
mm.
And so when I had my spiritual awakening,
No kumbaya for me.
no. In fact, when I was in my early 20s and I was with my first husband, yes, I've been married and divorced twice. But when I was with my first husband,
Same here.
we were sober together and we went to his sponsor's house and his sponsor led a group meditation. And oh my God, girl, I wanted to run out of the room. Like I was so uncomfortable.
Does it made you
I hated
uncomfortable?
it. I literally was like, I was like scanning the room to see if anyone else was like peeking, like was if they were like as uncomfortable as I was. And yeah, so I mean, that was in my early 20s. And so I was like, yeah, that's not for me. That's not for me. So in 2014, when I had my spiritual awakening, as a result of excruciating and debilitating low back pain, that was
Mm.
the way that my soul invited me into this journey. Like,
Oh,
everybody has a different experience, but typically the soul invites us onto the path of remembering the
so
truth of
you
who
were
we are.
kind of forced into it.
I
The
was,
universe
yeah,
is like, "Hey, look,
yeah.
girlfriend, you're gonna love yoga
You
and
are,
meditation."
yeah. we're gonna make it so that you can't move, and you're gonna be left with stillness and silence. So, but what happened was I actually ended up after I got through the initial like incredible discomfort with meditation, I actually started to fall in
Mm,
love with it. And what it did for me was it reconnected me with the little voice inside that I had disconnected from. And
mm,
I was like, I started to feel hope again. And I started to feel like all the things that I had, put up in an addict in a, box like of dreams and desires. I started to think, oh my gosh, like what if that is still possible and available to me? And I started teaching meditation to the people that were in my high intensity class, right? Like we would be we have mini trampolines back then, and we would be sprinting on the trampolines. And I'd be like, okay, guys, everybody shout out what you're grateful for. And like, I would do like a meditation. And so, yes, to answer your question in a very long way, my business partner and I had a falling out because my spiritual awakening was perceived as uh,
It threatened
a
her
betrayal
or
and
him.
abandonment of her and our business. But for me, it
Ah.
was just it wasn't, it was pure. It was from my soul. It was,
Mm.
this is the evolution of my soul. This is the next phase of my growth. And I could not, I use this line in my book, but I talk about how, like when a kid grows out of their shoes, right? And you can't stuff your feet back into the shoes. That's how I
Oh,
felt.
yeah.
Like,
That's a beautiful analogy. I love that
thank you.
one.
Yeah, I could not stuff my feet back into my old shoes. No matter how much of a people pleaser I was, and I've been a people pleaser my whole life, and trust me,
You still like those shoes, but you couldn't make them
I
fit.
couldn't make them fit. And it was hard because I knew that she was not happy with me, but I also could not.
But you did nothing wrong except grow and evolve, and
Yes.
that threatened her.
But yeah, to speak to your point, there were relationships and situations in my life that no longer fit who I was becoming.
Yeah. And I wanna say something, which I enjoyed your response on the meditation because you said something that, reminded me of me.
Uh-huh.
Mine I didn't start to meditate due to back pain. Mine was when I was really sick with Lyme
Right.
disease, and I started to learn yoga and meditation, and I'll tell you what, yoga wasn't quite as uncomfortable with, but meditation, oh man, Amber, when you were talking about you were, like, looking around,
Yeah.
I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, "People do this shit for 30 minutes. I'm 2 minutes in,
Yes.
and I'm dying, and I'm by myself in the house, but I'm so
Yep.
uncomfortable." And, the reason I was uncomfortable, was because I wasn't comfortable with myself.
Yep.
I was so uncomfortable, and I was really, really sick at the same time,
Yep.
but I was so uncomfortable with myself. I liked the
Oh,
busyness
for
going
sure.
on in my mind. I liked the distractions,
Yep.
and, I mean, was that ki do you think that's why you didn't like meditation at first is because it was just sometimes the silence makes us uncomfortable?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, we're not like taught how to be comfortable in stillness and silence. I
No.
mean, as a as
No.
a as a kid, I was like, at some sort of, either gymnastics or dance every single night, or soccer, I mean, it's like it wasn't it's
Mm.
being still is not considered something that's valuable for most
It's not
people.
taught in our
It's not
culture.
taught. It's
It
starting to
really
be. It's
isn't.
starting to be.
I mean, I don't sit my kids down and teach them that. I wasn't taught that. I mean, I was born in '81, and, it's as soon as you're 5, you're thrown into school,
Yep.
and everything's social, social, social.
Yeah.
Now as a mom, you know, and now I'm trying to teach my kids the power of alone time, but what you just said is right. We're not taught it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it wasn't until my divorce that I really learned how to enjoy just being with me. And it was not
Mm,
something that I mean, the to like your friend who's going through a divorce, like my heart just goes out to her because God, I'll never forget the pain. And I know that you know this feeling. Um,
mhm.
I was accustomed to putting my kids to bed every single night and waking them up in the morning every single morning. And the thought of like
Yeah.
not being there to do that, like it ripped my heart out. And so I had to go through what it felt like to be by myself. And I lived with my parents
Mhm.
when I first got a divorce for like 6, 7 months. And so the days when the kids would be back with their dad, I would be with my parents.
Yeah.
So I wasn't completely alone, but I was still, like, I mean,
It's a totally different life though. I
yes,
mean,
yes,
the life that you knew and that you always thought would be
yes,
with your kids, you hold them as a baby and you're like, you're going to spend every moment of their lives with them until they, fly out of the nest.
yeah,
And then that's uprooted. And,
yeah,
um, yeah, it takes a lot. That's I think that's one thing um that's important is that for any woman that's going through a bad um spot in their marriage relationship or even going through a divorce or maybe recently divorced is it's so hard to just get lost. It's so hard to get stuck in the victim mentality. But it's really, really hard to find yourself again because your life is just turned upside down.
Yeah, it is. But I'm here to
I
say,
know for
I was
sorry,
going to
go ahead.
say, I know that you and I both are testaments to, you know, it's not always easy. There are days, there
No.
are days where I cry myself to sleep because I'm so sad at, how it is. However, I wouldn't go back even if I could. I would never go back to
Mm,
living a life that was not true to who I am. And the pain of being in a situation where there's self-abandonment and self-betrayal um, is far greater than the pain of occasional loneliness. um, I The reward of knowing that I love myself and I honor myself and I am true to myself no matter what, that is worth it all. It's worth it all. In fact, when I first got divorced, my ex-husband said to me, he was convinced that I was already dating somebody because I was happy. And he said, "Aren't you lonely?" And I said, "I've been lonely."
I'm laughing because that's what mine said
Yeah.
too.
I said, "I've been lonely for years. Like, I'm not dating anybody. It just feels good to have chosen me, you know? Just feels good to have
Yeah,
chosen me."
Amber, you can't be happy by yourself. You got to be dating
Right.
somebody.
So,
You know what,
I
though?
really have learned to
Everything you
love
just
being
said's
alone
true.
sometimes. I mean, I still want to be with somebody, but I mean, I
Of
really,
course.
really
Yeah.
have moments where I'm just by myself that I'm like blissed out. I mean, really. And that's new, that's new.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. Everything you just said is right. You have to pick your pain. But I can tell you the pain that you go through and the discomfort you go through and overcoming your insecurities, your fears, learning who you are and healing. Yeah, it's painful and it sucks and you don't know the timeline on it and it's uncomfortable. But guess what? When you get through that, there's nothing greater. There's no greater gift than the freedom and joy and happiness that you feel. And if you don't do that, then you're just going to stay stuck being uncomfortable for a really, really long time until you do. So I try to tell people you have to pick your pain. At least there's an end when you choose to heal, right?
I mean, I've wanted to write a book for many, many years. So, yes, there is such satisfaction and fulfillment in saying yes to the
Hmm.
invitation from your soul and the call from your soul, and to say yes to uh, all the things that your heart longs to
Say
experience and
yes to
create.
yourself. It is never too late.
No,
I mean, you and I are just kind of coming into all of this. I'm
I'm
42.
49. Yeah,
So,
I'll be 50 this year, later this year. Yeah,
well, you look damn good. Whatever you're
I'm
doing is
dancing.
working.
I'm dancing.
It's the meditation.
It's the meditation and the dancing. Well, thank you. Yeah.
It is. But you know what though? I think it's important to share our age with all the listeners, but especially the women because um none of this was handed to us. We worked our ass off to get to where we are, but it's all kind of just happening in the last few years for
Yeah.
myself. And um it happened as soon as I said yes to myself.
Yeah.
So I know in your book you talk a lot about, the mindset shift. So how do you what are some tips that we can give the listeners on how to create a mental shift to kind of slowly get them out of that fog and just out of self-abandonment?
Well, one of the first things that I ask when I'm coaching women when they come to me and they are at a place in their life where they're feeling lost, or they're feeling like they have, you know, created a life that they thought would make them happy, but they're not. One of the first things I ask them is, what brings you joy? What did you love? What did
Mm.
you love as a child? Right? What makes you feel the most like you? Because getting into alignment with who we truly are is going to set us up to have the courage and have the faith and have the mindset that we need to continue to be resilient, to find our resilience, to find our strength, to find our courage. Um, and there are periods of time after you've said yes to something that there's no tangible evidence that you've made the right choice. It's like you have blind faith, right? But
Mm.
what brings me comfort is coming into alignment with my soul self. And for me, that is meditation, that is dance, that is breath work, that is listening to a podcast that uplifts me, that is writing, that is having a conversation with a friend. Like yesterday morning, I was kind of in a low because my kids are with their dad, and we've been going through a new phase of this co-parenting, and it's uncomfortable, and it's painful. And so I was having a low this weekend, just kind of feeling sad. And I went over to my friend's house yesterday, and we went for a walk. And I walked in the door, and she said, "Girl, I'm having a low." And I was like, oh, "Me too." And we hugged and we cried, and then we went for a walk, and we just talked, and we listened, and we supported each other, and we loved each other. And by the time I went
Mm.
home after like 2 hours of being together, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm okay. Like feelings, this is the thing about
Aw.
feelings and emotions. They
Yeah.
pass. They pass,
They do
right?
pass. Yeah.
Like I could feel
Just can't
super,
get stuck in
yeah,
it.
I could feel super low one day, and then the next day I could be on top of the world, feeling super hopeful. Like, so it's like try not to attach to the emotion, and like ride the story of that. Like,
Yes.
oh, well,
Love
here's
that.
a wave. The wave is here, and the wave is sadness today. Okay, well, this is happening. And tomorrow the wave is going to be happy. Okay, so we're going to ride the wave, and we're just going to feel it, and we're going to cry if we need to, and we're going to move if we need to, and we're going to talk to some friends, and I would say also, like, find other people who are on this path to
Yeah.
to to reclaiming the truth of who they are. Because if you are
Yep.
not with other people who are reclaiming the truth of who they are, you will stay stuck. It's very hard to be in the company of
Oh,
people.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's very hard to be in the company of people who say things like, you're selfish, you're irresponsible, you're just a dreamer, you believe in a utopia that
Uh-huh.
doesn't exist, you live in la la land, you don't live in a reality. Like, you're going to believe that if you stay in that. So you got to find people that are like, "Girl,
Yes.
you want to write a book? You write a book. You want to write a show? You write a show. You believe that you're here for more? Yes, you are, right?" That's why I love coaching women, because I
Mhm.
love giving them what I need.
Yes, I love what you just said. Um, Everything you just said, and especially the part about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And also when you're talking about basically you allow yourself to feel. You have to feel and deal in order to heal.
Yep.
But you just have to know it. You and I have leaned on each other a lot because we kind of go through some similar
Yep.
things with our kids and then the book writing
Yeah.
process. And some days it's just a shitty day. And I try to give myself a day or two to feel it, but then after that I don't give myself any more time.
Yeah.
Um because if not, like you said, you get stuck in that.
Yep.
And then to speak to what you were saying about the people you surround yourself with, man, that right there, I'm telling you what, it's the saying of from the outside looking in is so damn true because I look back at friendships and relationships I once had, and then I didn't have them, and I would wonder like why, what happened. But now I look back and I realized hey, the universe was protecting me there. Those weren't my people, because like you said, the right people are going to be in your corner and love you unconditionally. They're never going to question you. They're never going to make you feel dumb or less than. they're going to be your biggest fans and supporters.
That's right.
Um, and I love that. I love what you said because that is so very true. Um, and the other thing with healing is that as you heal, I call those people the weeds, right? The emotional vampires.
Mm.
Those weeds just kind of pluck themselves out. They kind of fall off
Mm-hmm.
as you begin to heal.
Right.
And that's why today you and I both are able to have a relationship with each other and deep connections with the people we meet
Right.
because it first begins within ourselves.
And you know what else I just thought of when you were saying that? Um, I wrote this in my, I think I wrote this in my book about triggers. Like
Mm,
when you're triggered by someone, the only reason you're triggered is because you are in agreement with what they have just said. So let's say somebody says to you, you're dumb, right? Like you just, right? The only way that you're going to actually be triggered by that is if you are in agreement with that belief and you believe
mm,
that you're dumb or you're not worthy or whatever. Once you start to love yourself so fiercely that that becomes a ridiculous notion, when that person says something to you like that, it's like, well, that's the most absurd. Of course,
what?
that's not true. Right. Like, and it bounces off of you because you realize what that is a projection of what they're dealing with. It has nothing to do with you. And
Oh.
so that's also very freeing and liberating. The more that you love yourself and the more that you, like you said in your book, take off the labels, right, that people gave to you, you take those off. And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, what once triggered me no longer triggers me because I am not in agreement with that projection.
I love what you just said. I want you to say that again for everyone because I think that's fucking gold. You need to make out like your tagline. You said it, and that you need to say it your way because it was better. But basically, you were saying you only believe something
You're only
if
triggered.
someone says you're
You're only triggered
yes.
by someone's comment if you are in
Uh-huh.
agreement on some level
Ah,
with
there you
their
go.
comment. So
That is
if
gold.
someone criticizes you or calls you a name or puts
Yep.
you down, the only reason you're triggered is because you are in agreement. And that is why this healing process requires radical ownership. Because
Oh, I
if
love
I'm
that.
going to be in a relationship with someone and they, let's say they call me a name or put me down, if I keep them the villain and I don't take radical ownership of why I'm triggered, I will never be free. The only way that I will be
Mm,
free is if I question my trigger and I go, okay, so I'm triggered right now, which means I am in agreement with that on some level. So why am I in agreement with that? And then go down that, road of like, what does that stem from and what needs to be healed? What is the
yeah,
root of that?
I love
Yeah.
that.
And then once you're out of that and you've distanced yourself from that, then you realize like, that is so ridiculous because I love myself and I like myself and I like who I am and I like how I show up in the world and I like the woman that I am and the mom that I am. And so
Mhm.
anybody that doesn't see that or see me, uh, they're not my people.
Yes. That right there, man, that was everything. And that's exactly what people need to do to get out of abandonment. It begins with
Yes.
self-love. But every time you feel triggered, like what Amber just said, that you need to do exactly what she just said. Ask yourself why.
Yep.
Why am I triggered? Do I believe that? Because if you believe that's true, that's why you're being triggered. But if you know that's not the truth, it shouldn't even bother you, right?
Mhm. And that
Yeah, that was
there's
gold.
thank you. There's no better feeling than feeling liberated from
Mm.
what has like tortured you in the past. Like,
Been
yes,
your chains, those
yes,
invisible chains that hold us
that's right.
back.
Yeah. I felt at the mercy of life circumstances. And so
Yeah.
to be able to like have a process and I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Like, I mean, I just the other
Mm.
day left you a message and I was in tears. I was like, girl,
Both of
we
us.
were both having a day, right? We were just having a day and that's okay. But
The mindset coaches were crying.
But you know what? That's the other reason why I felt so strongly about including all of my journal entries, because I don't want anybody to be mistaken, um, that like I'm beyond being a human. Like
Mhm.
I am still a human having this human experience at navigating it. But the thing that I think is one of my greatest gifts and greatest strengths is that I am incredibly resilient. Like
Yes,
I
you
could
are.
be on the floor crying my eyes out one day, and the next day I'm like, okay, let's do this. We got this.
Next day, I'm on the floor meditating.
I'm dancing. That's what I'm doing.
You know what? It's I wanna hit on that, the healing process, and I love that you're sharing that, is that it doesn't matter, how much healing you do. You don't just heal and then all of a sudden everything's perfect. Healing to me is never
That's
ending.
right.
It is constant, um, and it doesn't mean you don't go through some difficult times. There's when I think about some of the most painful moments in my life, they're still really sad,
Yeah.
but they don't affect me. They don't have a grip on me anymore.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we don't get sad sometimes, and people just need to let themselves grieve sometimes. It's absolutely
It
okay.
is. It is. But like you said, I recognize when I'm having a pity party and I'm like, okay, all right, enough pity party. And then what I do is
I like to give myself a day. I'm like, "All right, bring on the sweats.
yeah.
I'm gonna eat some popcorn,
Yesterday,
maybe some hot
that's what I
cocoa."
did yesterday. I came home from my friends and I was like, you know what? It's raining here in Southern California and my kids are with their dad and I'm feeling a little sorry for myself. And I'm just going to like sit on my couch and have some snacks and watch movies and cry. And that's okay.
You know what, though? Sometimes that's what you need, and I don't give myself a lot of passes when it comes to, eating corn products or sugar, things like that. But you know what? There's some days I'm like, "Yeah, I deserve it. Definitely getting 2 bags of
It's
popcorn a day,
happening.
extra
It's
butter."
happening today. It's okay. You know what else I want to say too
Oh my
for the
goodness.
listener is one of my tools that I use is this sentence. How is this happening for me? Because
Ooh, I like that. How is it happening
yeah,
for
and I
me?
mean, I'm pretty sure
I like that.
pretty sure I heard Oprah Winfrey say that like 9 years ago. So this is nothing that I came up with.
That's okay. We know Amber said it.
But when I'm feeling, when something has happened that really just throws me, and I'm feeling sorry for myself, and I'm like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I eventually come to this place, and this is what gets me out of my stuckness. I'm like, okay, this is happening for me. How is this happening for me?
Uh,
Right? If everything in my life is happening for my growth, for my expansion, for my highest good, how is this happening? And how can I shift my mindset and shift my perspective
mm,
to look for how it's happening for me? And then
I love that. So to get out of stuckness, ask yourself, "How is this happening for
how
me?"
is this happening for me? Yeah. And also, like we are given opportunities because sometimes it feels like, really, haven't I done enough healing work? I'm still doing this thing, or I'm still having this pattern show up in my life. But like when I zoom out and I go, okay, so really this is an opportunity for me to address this, handle this in this new way as this new version of myself. So it doesn't like, I still have things where I'm like, I'm still doing this. I'm still, but I'm like, okay, but it's not gonna last as long as it did, right? Like I'm not gonna be in
Mm,
the whatever, however self abandonment is showing up for me, because it
yeah,
still does,
yeah,
right? It still does. So,
of
but I
course. It's
recognize
just that
it.
now you know how to
I
deal with it.
recognize it sooner. So I'm like, okay, boom, oh, this is happening. All right, what do I need to do as this new version of myself, this new empowered, embodied version of myself? How is she going to handle this? And then, and then,
I like
and
that.
then that brings me back into that embodied place.
Another nugget of gold, by the way, when you said that. How is she gonna handle this?
Yeah,
In other words, that's how the old me used
right,
to, but how is this new me gonna handle
right.
it? So you said you've given away so much gold, and I mean, I could keep talking to you for
I
hours,
love
and we
you.
know that. But
Okay.
um, you know, just the little bit of gold that I've personally received, and I know my listeners have in this episode. I mean, go buy her book right now. It's on
Yay!
Amazon.
Yes.
Born to be all of me,
Born.
Amber Susa. And in the show notes, there's going to be the
Yep.
links to where you can find her on Instagram. Amber also has her own podcast as well. She's a co-host of The Embodied Woman, and I was actually a guest on that show, and it's amazing. So, Amber, will you tell everyone where they can find you? Instagram, um, your website. Tell us where we can find you.
Thank you. Yes, Instagram. I've got two profiles right now. I've got Amber Susa, S as in Sam, USA. Dot Alamy. It's ALLOM as in Mary I. And then I've also got Alamy under what's the underline? The line that's like the low line, not
The
the
underscore.
underscore. Alamy Health.
Yeah.
And then my website right now is alamy.com, ALLOM as in Mary I.com. Although, Janna, I'm actually looking to transition into changing it to ambersusa.com in the spring. So
Ooh,
that'll,
ooh, I like that.
yeah, that's, there's always a next chapter, and that's feeling like the right
You
chapter.
know what though? There is no rule against evolving. We can always evolve. We can
Yep,
always become something new. It's never too late. You're never too old.
yep.
I hope when I'm 90, I'm still evolving.
Me too. Me too. I feel like in so many ways, I feel like I'm just beginning. Like, I feel like my life up to this point, and like I said, I'll be
Mm,
50 in November.
mhm.
I feel like everything that has led me to this point has just been like the training ground and all the information that I've needed to gather to be able to like
Yes.
really get started with what my life purpose is.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you know what though? That's so important is you got to take everything and learn from it. And you're going to be 50 and like into it's literally stepping into your prime, into your purpose and success and all that was meant for you because you decided to do the work, which you're teaching in your books. I want everyone, as soon as you're done listening, I want you to go buy her book. You can go find it on Amazon. It's also going to be in the show notes as well. Born to be all of me, Amber Susa. Amber, thank you for coming on today. I have really enjoyed having you, and I know I'm going to have you again.
Oh, I love you so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day.